On Tuesday, January the 13th, the United States Supreme Court will be hearing oral arguments in two cases involving the constitutionality of banning transgender female students from playing school sports. There's been a lot of attention and focus on the issue of transgender kids playing sports in accordance with their gender identity, both in the media and by politicians and elected officials, including in Michigan. I'd like to clear up some mistruths and disinformation about transgender student athletes, as well as to challenge the motivations of some of our elected officials. First, trans students want to play sports for the same reasons that other students do: to be part of a team, to set goals, and through hard work and discipline, obtain those goals. There's no nefarious purpose behind trans students playing high school sports. A transgender girl isn't pretending to be transgender so that she can have a competitive advantage over cisgender girls in sports competitions. Second, the Michigan High School Athletic Association has a policy in place to address concerns about competitive advantage. The organization does an individualized assessment of transgender female athletes competing in interscholastic sports, and then they decide whether to grant a waiver for participation. During the 24-25 school year, out of 175,000 high school students participating in sports, the MHSAA granted 2 waivers to trans female students. So we're talking about a very small number. Actually, the number of trans students participating in sports is a fraction of a percentage point. The answer to concerns regarding competition is best addressed through this MHSAA policy as opposed to having a blanket ban on trans female students. These blanket bans are banned for all women and girls, and we know these attacks targeting trans girls have led to harassment of athletes who are not transgender, especially young women of color and cisgender girls due to their strength or their height or their size. It should be noted that in most states that have trans sports ban, those legislators supporting them can't identify a single trans student playing sports. Furthermore, the assumption that transgender female students have a biological advantage over cisgender students is not supported by actual scientific studies or research. Much of this depends on the individual and the sport that's being played. Title IX is a federal civil rights law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in education. Title IX has been held by federal courts to protect trans students from discrimination, and that sports bans against trans female students violates Title IX as well as the equal protection guarantees in our Constitution. A sports ban against trans girls would also violate Michigan's civil rights laws, which explicitly prohibit discrimination based on gender identity. To this date, no federal court has held that a cisgender female student has a Title IX right not to share a space with a transgender girl, including playing sports. And to the politicians and elected officials who are incessant in their attacks against transgender kids, instead of solving problems like affordability and making sure that our public schools have sufficient resources or that funding for girls' sports is on an equal plane with funding for boys' sports programs, these politicians and elected officials are trying to distract us from their inability to come up with meaningful solutions to real problems that are impacting Michigan families. Our message to those politicians and leaders is to do your job and quit bullying transgender kids in order to cover up your lack of effectiveness in your job.